They never noticed me growing up. I was just the quiet one in the background. Until the day their perfect world collapsed, and I was the only one who answered the phone. You could tell who the favorite was just by watching dinner. Every night, without fail, Mom would lean over to serve a second helping to Derek first. Dad would ask about his soccer practice before he even swallowed his first bite. The spotlight at our dinner table always belonged to him. Derek, the loud one, the achiever, the golden boy. I was just there. My name is Matt, and I grew up as the quiet son. That was the label everyone gave me. Never the problem child, never the star. Just the quiet one. I learned early on how to blend into the background, to speak softly, to stay out of the way, to get comfortable with silence. People said things like, Matt's easy, or he's low maintenance, as if that was supposed to be a compliment. But low maintenance just meant invisible. I can still remember one Thanksgiving. Must have been around 3rd grade. I had spent hours building this Lego castle, trying to recreate the one from the commercial. I brought it downstairs, excited to show it off. Derek had just finished his 4th grade science project, some volcano thing with too much glitter. He dumped it on the counter, and everyone swarmed. Wow, look at that. Derek, this is amazing. No one even looked at mine. I ended up carrying it back upstairs without saying a word. Left it on my desk for a week before I finally took it apart. That was how it always was. Derek got the praise, the attention, the framed pictures on the wall. Me? I got polite nods, the occasional, that's nice, Matt, and the freedom to disappear unnoticed. You know what the funny part is? I never even felt jealous. Not really. I just accepted it. I figured that was my role. Quiet, reliable, invisible. You would be surprised how easy it is to disappear when no one's really looking at you. By high school, I stopped raising my hand in class. I stopped trying to bring home report cards. I would ace a math test, slide it on the kitchen table, and no one would even mention it. Meanwhile, Derek brought home a B+ in chemistry and got a steak dinner. I do not blame him. Not really. He was just soaking in what they gave him. He knew how to hold a room, how to tell a story, how to make people laugh. Me? I was the kid sitting on the steps, listening to the adults talk like I was not even there. That silence followed me everywhere. Into college, into work, into relationships. I never expected anything from anyone, and in return, they never expected much from me. And weirdly, I got used to it. I was the background character in my own family. Until the day I got the call. Mom's voice was shaking. Dad had fallen. There was no one else around. Derek was unreachable. Her exact words. I did not know who else to call. And just like that, the son who was never enough became the only one left. But what she said next, that was the part that stopped me cold. I still remember standing in the middle of my apartment, phone pressed to my ear, hearing those words. I did not know who else to call. Not, I need you. Not, can you help? Just, the backup option. The last name on the list when the others flake. I asked what happened. She said Dad had slipped in the kitchen. Nothing was broken, but he was disoriented. Dizzy. She sounded panicked, like she was holding it together with duct tape and prayer. Said the paramedics had checked him out and left, but she was scared he might fall again. Then came the part that hit me right in the chest. She said, Derek is busy with work. Of course he is. Derek works in finance, some high-pressure corporate job he never stops bragging about. Big city, expensive suits, always on a call. I could already picture his response, something smooth and guiltless, like, sorry, Mom. Wish I could, but I'm slammed. So now it was my turn. After years of being left out of family decisions, of watching from the sidelines while they catered to Derek's every whim, suddenly, I was the one they needed. And I hated how good that felt. I did not answer right away. I just stood there, phone in hand, staring at the crack in my kitchen tile I had been meaning to fix for months. I think I said something like, okay, I'll come by after work. Simple, steady, exactly what they expected from me. But inside, I was spinning. It had been years since I really spent time with them. I saw them on holidays, waved from across rooms, kept conversation polite and brief. I never told them about my promotions, never mentioned the book I had helped publish or the community project I ran on weekends. They never asked, and I never offered. Driving to their house that night, I kept thinking, why now? Why is it only when things fall apart that I matter? The house looked the same. Same chipped paint on the shutters. Same porch swing that creaked too loud. But something felt different. For the first time in forever, I was not showing up as the forgotten son. I was there because they needed me. Because I was the only one left. Mom opened the door before I even knocked. Her eyes were red. Not crying, exactly, just tired. She stepped aside, and for a second, it felt like I was 15 again, walking in after school, dropping my backpack by the door. Except now I had car keys in one hand and resentment in the other. Dad was on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, blinking like he was trying to remember what year it was. He looked smaller. Not just older, smaller. Like the version of him I remembered had been shrunk down and softened. He saw me, and his lips twitched like he wanted to say something. But all he managed was, "Hey, kiddo." That word, kiddo, used to make my skin crawl. It was what he called me when he remembered I existed. I sat down across from him. He looked at me like he was trying to place me, like I had come home from a long trip, and he had not realized I had ever left. I asked what the doctors said. Mom gave a list of vague medical terms and shrugged like none of it really meant anything. But then she said, "He needs help, Matt. I cannot do this alone." I nodded slowly. But what I said next, that changed everything. I looked at my mom, her shoulders hunched like she had been carrying this weight for years without ever admitting it. She repeated it again, this time quieter. "I can't do this alone." I nodded, but my chest tightened. I wanted to say yes right away. I really did. But something in me, some small, bitter part that had been quiet for decades, started to wake up. So I asked, "Where's Derek?" It was not a jab. Not exactly. More like a test. I wanted to see how honest she would be. She shifted in her seat. "He said he's trying to get out here by the weekend." That was 4 days away. I stared at her, then glanced at my dad, who had drifted off into a half-sleep, his chin resting against his chest. This man, who once told me to stop crying because boys handle things, now looked like he might fall over from just trying to stand. And the golden boy was busy. Something broke loose inside me then. Not anger, not sadness, just this quiet, solid knowing. The kind of knowing that settles into your bones when you finally stop waiting for someone to show up for you and realize it has to be you now. So I told her, "I'll help, but on my terms." She blinked. "What do you mean?" I told her I would not be staying overnight. I had work in the mornings, and I was not about to pause my whole life again. I would help set up support, talk to his doctor, get a plan in place. But I was not moving back in. I was not Derek. That last part, I think it surprised us both. She nodded, slowly. But there was something in her face, this mix of gratitude and hesitation, that made my stomach twist. Almost like she was relieved I had stepped in, but still unsure if I could handle it. As if all those years of being quiet had translated to incapable. I went to the kitchen to grab some water and stopped cold. There it was. The same fridge from my childhood, plastered with magnets and photos. And right in the middle, Derek's high school football picture. Next to it, his wedding photo, and a newspaper clipping from when his company made the front page. Not a single picture of me. Not one. I opened the drawer below, the junk drawer, the one where Mom used to stuff receipts and coupons and takeout menus. Inside, buried under expired batteries and twist ties, I saw it. An old progress report. Mine. 3rd grade. Straight S. The corner still had the gold star my teacher had stuck on. I guess they had kept it. Just never showed it off. I closed the drawer and stood there for a second. Not angry. Just hollow. That night, I drove home in silence. My phone buzzed once, an email from work. I ignored it. My thoughts were louder. They had called me because they had no one else. But now that I was in, now that I was helping, I could not stop wondering, was this finally love? Or was I just convenient? The next morning, before I even had a chance to brush my teeth, my phone rang. It was Mom. "Can you come by after work?" she asked. "The nurse canceled, and I need someone here while I run to the pharmacy." I paused. It had been less than 12 hours since I told her I would help, but on my terms. That part, apparently, had not landed. I said yes anyway, because that is what I do. I say yes. I figure things out. I show up. After work, I drove straight over, still in my office clothes. The house smelled like reheated soup and laundry that had been sitting in the washer too long. Dad was half watching TV. His eyes lit up when he saw me. Only for a second, but it was the first real spark I had seen in his face since the fall. We sat in silence for a while. The local news droned on in the background. At one point, he asked if I had ever thought about getting married. I said no. He nodded like that made sense, then turned back to the TV. It was strange, him asking about my life. He had never asked before. Not when I moved out. Not when I landed my first real job. Not even when I bought my own condo. But now that his body was failing him, now that he needed someone to sit with him so he would not fall again, that was when he noticed I had a life outside of them. When Mom got back, she looked exhausted. Not physically, emotionally. Like she was carrying regret, but had no idea how to set it down. She thanked me without meeting my eyes. I told her I could help schedule follow-ups, look into a part-time home aide, maybe even get the insurance paperwork started. She said, "I knew I could count on you." And that sentence, more than anything, hit me the wrong way. She knew she could count on me. Since when? I walked out to my car and just sat there for a while, engine off, keys in my lap. I kept thinking about that junk drawer, that progress report, tucked away for years. It was like they had known I was capable this whole time, just never wanted to say it out loud. That night, I checked my email. Derek had written, one line, "Thanks for stepping in. Let me know if you need anything." I stared at it for a long time. No offer to fly in sooner. No questions. No "how is Dad?" Just a quick pat on the back from 1,000 miles away. I did not reply. Instead, I opened a blank document and started making a list. Medications. Appointment dates. What kind of railings needed to be installed near the stairs? And somewhere between item 12 and 13, I felt it. This cold little truth settle into my gut. This was not some heroic comeback. I was not being celebrated or finally seen. I was just the fallback plan, the safety net, the quiet son they never wanted to admit they needed. But I would be damned if I let them shape the terms this time. 2 weeks passed like that. Every day after work, I would head to their place. Sometimes to help with dinner. Sometimes just to sit with Dad while Mom ran errands. I learned the schedule for his meds, the quirks of his walker, which hallway lights buzzed too loud when he tried to sleep. And still, Derek was nowhere. Once, I asked if he had called. Mom just said, "He is under a lot of pressure right now." Like that explained everything. Like my time was somehow worth less because I did not work in some glass tower downtown. But here is the twist I did not see coming. One night, after Dad had gone to bed, Mom poured herself a cup of tea, sat down across from me at the table, and asked, "Were you always this capable?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" She stirred her tea. "You just seem so calm. Like you always know what to do. I do not remember you being like that." I laughed, quiet and bitter. Maybe you were not looking. That hung in the air between us, long enough for her to look down at her hands. She said, "I always thought you preferred the background." I answered, "I did not prefer it. I just stopped fighting for space." She did not argue. And that, honestly, that hit harder than if she had tried to deny it. Later that week, I got a text from Derek. Not even a call. "Flying in Friday. Just for the weekend. Need you to brief me." That was it. I should have been glad he was coming. Relieved to have someone share the load. But instead, I felt something unexpected rise in my throat, resentment. Not because I wanted credit, but because now that he was finally swooping in, I knew exactly how it would go. He would shake a few hands, crack a few jokes, ask a couple of obvious questions, and they would praise him for caring, for showing up. And me? I would fade back into the corner, like always. So I made a decision. If Derek wanted a briefing, I would give him one. But not to make his life easier. To show him just how far things had come without him. Friday night, I was already at the house when he arrived. He walked in like he had not been gone for weeks, like everything was normal. Gave me that same old half smile, like we were still kids, like we were still brothers who got along. But when he saw Dad, frail, bent, a little confused, his face cracked. Reality, finally catching up. He pulled me aside, tried to keep his voice low. "This is worse than Mom made it sound." I did not say anything. I let the silence do the talking. Then he asked, "So what exactly have you been doing for him?" I handed him a folder. Dates, medications, routines, a schedule I had built from scratch. He flipped through it, eyebrows rising. And that is when he said it. The words I never expected to hear come out of Derek's mouth. "Damn, Matt. I had no idea you were this organized." But what he said next, that is what set everything in motion. Derek handed the folder back, slower this time. He was not smirking anymore. Then he said, "Honestly, I thought you still lived in that old apartment, back when you were doing whatever it was." Whatever it was. That was how he summed up the last 10 years of my life. I could have corrected him. Told him I worked in systems analysis now. That I led a small team. That I owned a condo and volunteered on weekends and had a circle of friends who actually saw me. But I did not. Because it was never about not knowing. It was about never caring enough to ask. We spent the next hour going over Dad's condition. I answered every question. I explained every routine. I showed him where the emergency contacts were, what the insurance would and would not cover. He nodded along like a student in class. Polite, attentive, still somehow holding that edge of condescension, like I was impressive for someone who had been so unremarkable. Later, while Mom was busy reheating leftovers and Dad was half asleep on the couch, Derek leaned in and asked me something that I still think about. He said, "Why did they call you first?" It was not curiosity in his voice. It was insecurity. The golden son, the one they had always praised, always leaned on, was finally realizing that he had not just slipped down the ladder. He had been off the radar for years. I looked at him and said, because I answered. That shut him up. For the first time maybe ever, he looked smaller than me. Not just in presence, but in weight. Like he knew, deep down, that all those years of being the favorite had not built a single bridge that could actually hold. He left the next morning. Said he had to get back to the office. Said he would check in again soon. I watched him hug Mom at the door. She held on a little too long. Almost like she was trying to keep him there, just for one more day. But he slipped away, as always. After he left, she turned to me. Said, "I wish he could stay longer." I nodded. Then I asked her, "Did you ever wish I had left sooner?" She did not answer. That silence said more than anything she could have come up with. And yet I stayed. Because for better or worse, this had become mine to carry. But something else happened the following week, something that changed everything again. It started with a voicemail. I almost did not listen to it. The number was unfamiliar, just a local area code. No name, no text, just a single 1-minute voicemail left on a Tuesday afternoon while I was on my lunch break. I figured it was spam, some appointment reminder or political campaign. But something made me tap play. The voice was raspy, low, and slow. I recognized it immediately. Dad. He must have gotten a hold of Mom's phone while she was napping. He said my name first. Just Matt. No kiddo, no jokes. Then came a long pause. I could hear the television playing in the background, a news anchor talking about something completely unrelated, muffled by distance. Then he said something that nearly made me drop my phone. "I never really saw you. Not the way I should have." I froze. Your brother always made things loud. You made things easier. And I think I mistook quiet for less. I do not know how to fix that now, but I wanted to say it before I forget again. He ended the message with, "Thank you, son." That last word hit like a brick. Son. It was the first time he had called me that without it sounding like filler, like something said out of habit. I sat there in the break room, phone pressed to my ear, food untouched, wondering if I had imagined it. I listened to it 3 times, saved it, locked it, and then I cried. Not loud, just quiet tears. The kind you hold in for too long until they slip out without permission. That voicemail changed something in me. Not because it made things better, but because it proved I had not made it all up. The silence, the favoritism, the distance, it was real. And now, finally, someone in that house was admitting it. That night, I showed up a little later than usual. Mom asked if everything was okay. I told her I had just needed time after work. She nodded, then said something strange. "Your dad's been asking for you." I went into the living room. He was asleep in his chair, but when I sat down beside him, he stirred. Opened one eye. "You came," he mumbled. I wanted to tell him I heard the message, that it meant something. But instead, I just said, "Yeah, I'm here." He nodded. That was all he needed. But just when I thought we were getting somewhere, the next day, Derek called. And what he asked me, it was the moment I finally realized that this family had not changed. They were just shifting the weight onto me. The call came just after dinner. I was still at my parents' place, cleaning up dishes while Mom helped Dad get ready for bed. My phone buzzed, and there it was, Derek's name. I let it ring twice before picking up. No rush. His voice was upbeat, too upbeat. "Hey, Matt. Just checking in. How are things going over there?" I gave him the basics. Dad was eating better. The new handrails helped. Physical therapy had been scheduled. I had filed the insurance paperwork myself. He gave a low whistle. "Wow, that is a lot. You really stepped up." Something about the way he said it. It felt more like a setup than a compliment. Then came the ask. He cleared his throat. "So listen, I was thinking, it might make sense if you just stayed with them full-time for a while." I stopped drying the plate in my hand. "What?" He kept going, breezy as ever. "Just temporarily. Until Dad's stronger. You know the house, you already have the system down. Mom trusts you. It makes sense. I was silent. Then he said it. I would do it myself, but my job. That line. I cut him off. Calmly. You mean the job they brag about, frame articles for, and throw dinner parties around? That job? He hesitated. Come on, Matt. That is not fair. I told him fair was watching the same parents who ignored you for 20 years suddenly treat you like the family's home care plan, just because the golden boy was too busy to pick up the slack. He sighed. Look, I am just saying, it would really help. Mom said she is starting to rely on you more, and I can send money if that helps make it easier. That one hit differently. I do not know why. Maybe because it proved he still saw me as someone you could just pay off. Like a stand-in. Like help. Not a son. Not a brother. Just the support beam. I did not yell. I just said this. You had your shot at being present. I will help them, but I will not carry them for you. He was quiet for a few seconds. Then he said, fine, do what you want. And hung up. That night, Mom must have sensed something had shifted. She kept glancing at me during dinner, like she was waiting for me to speak. But I said nothing, because from that point on, I was not doing this for them. Not anymore. I was doing it for me. For the man I had become when no one was watching. And as I cleared the table, something occurred to me. They still had no idea who I really was. But they were about to find out. The truth has a strange way of showing up at the most inconvenient times. It was a Sunday afternoon. Mom was sorting through old paperwork at the kitchen table while Dad was dozing off in the living room recliner, a blanket pulled up to his chest. I was halfway through replacing the batteries in the smoke detectors when I heard it. Her gasp. Not the sharp kind, not panic. Just soft, like a sudden realization hitting her in the chest. I walked in to check on her, and she was holding a sheet of paper in her hand. She looked up at me, eyes narrowed. Matt, what is this? I glanced down. It was a printout of an article, one I had given a talk for at a regional health summit months ago. They had listed me as a keynote. My name, my title, the whole thing. I had left a copy in my bag for a coworker to sign, totally forgot it was in there. I took a breath. That's from a conference. I spoke at it. Her eyes scanned it again. You were the lead speaker? Yeah. More silence. Then she said it. The question that cracked open every sealed-up corner of the past 10 years. Why didn't you tell us? I could have lied. Could have shrugged it off like it was no big deal. But instead, I just told her the truth. Because you never asked. She opened her mouth, but I kept going. When I got promoted, you were talking about Derek's bonus. When I got published, you were raving about his wedding. When I bought my first home, you sent me pictures of his vacation. Her face dropped. I did not say it to be cruel. I just wanted her to hear it out loud, for once. She folded the paper and set it down, staring at nothing. Her voice was small. I did not know. I nodded. That is the point. Later that evening, she brought it up to Dad. He looked at me, confused at first. You're doing talks now? I said yes. Told him about my job, the team I managed, the grant I helped write. He listened. Not distracted, not dismissive. Just quiet. Then he said something I never expected to hear from him. I'm proud of you. The words were stiff, like he had not used them in years. But they landed. Deep. I nodded. Thanks. He added, I should have said it sooner. I said, you should have. That night, I stayed late. Helped Dad to bed. Made sure the house was locked up. Mom hugged me on the way out, longer than usual. But just before I left, she asked one more question. A quiet one. Are you going to stay in our lives after all this? I looked at her and said something that made her flinch. She stood there in the hallway, her hands wringing a dish towel like it held all the answers. Are you going to stay in our lives after all this? I looked at her for a long moment. Not angry, just clear. And then I said it. Not like before. She blinked. What do you mean? I set my bag down and leaned against the wall, tired in a way that had nothing to do with work. I mean, I'll help. I'll visit. I'll do what is right. But I'm not stepping back into that role. Not the invisible one. Not the background filler. If you want me here, it's going to be as who I am now, not who you remember. She looked like she wanted to argue, but instead, she just nodded. Slowly, almost like she knew this moment was coming. Maybe she always did. I left that night without waiting for another apology. I did not need one anymore. The next few months passed differently. I stopped going by every day. I hired a home aide for them using the insurance plan I had organized. I set up meal deliveries, helped them get a medical alert system. I checked in twice a week. I kept things structured, professional, and distant. Derek never came back after that weekend. He sent flowers once. Called once more. That was it. But no one seemed surprised. The old family dynamic was gone now. And in its place was something colder, but more honest. Mom started calling just to talk sometimes. Not out of need. Just to ask about my day. About my work. About my life. She was learning, slowly, how to see me. And Dad, he never mentioned the voicemail. But every time I saw him, he looked at me a little longer. Like maybe now, he was finally seeing the son he had ignored for most of his life. But here is the truth. It still hurt. Even after all the help, the effort, the recognition, there was a hole inside me that never got filled. A part of me still wondered why they only saw my worth when things fell apart. Why it took illness and absence for them to notice I was even in the room. Was it love? Or just convenience? I think the answer is both. Some people only understand value when it shows up with a solution in its hands. And I showed up. I was the one who stayed. The one who carried the weight when no one else would. But I do not carry it for free anymore. I do it on my terms. Because I spent too many years asking for a seat at the table. Now, I bring my own chair.